Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Tuesday, March the 20th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Your second daily dose of happy for the day out of 3, because, of course, we have the evening show tonight with Tom Wells at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That's an opportunity for people who want to call in or have thought about calling in but couldn't do it during the day. Well, Tuesday night, you have no more excuses. Now you have the opportunity to call in. And the only thing left to do is, well, to decide to call in. So we hope you do. But that's for later. Right now.
But you know what? That makes this show the double stuffed Oreo gooey middle between the other show.
That's good. I like that. We actually use the same analogy with our cats, but we use that when we're asleep because we have 2 black cats. And so if we're asleep in the bed and one cat is on one side of us, the other cat's on the other side, then we're double stuffed. If one cat is if one cat is on one side of us and the other cat is on the other side of the same person, then that's Oreo'd.
Fun.
Analogies can be so much fun.
I love the double stuffed inside of an Oreo. Man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was one of those great marketing ideas that transcended cookies and went into other fields entirely. Mm-hmm. So how are you doing today? Has Tuesday been nice to you? Has it been a pleasant day for you, I hope?
It's been wonderful. I've had, in my job, there's been all sorts of announcements made and things that have made my head kind of go, woo, and I've been training new people. And so lots of stuff going on. But that's part of my normal everyday life. But, in terms of Project X, the wonderful thing that I'm wanting to create for myself.
That's right.
Yesterday, you had sent me an email letting us know about one of our fans, people who are one of our listeners, relating to what I was talking about and saying that she really resonated with, what I was sharing, and just threw in some numerology about how the day I got so much insight was in 1111, which is basically representing illumination. So I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, that was nice. Thanks for sending that in, by the way, listener.
Yeah. And I just felt really overjoyed that, somebody commented on the day, because honestly, when we were finished with the show, I was kind of asking you for your feedback. I was asking my friend for her feedback, not because I needed it, but I flow with such a stream of consciousness that I'm not always, I can't necessarily judge or evaluate what I'm saying or doing while I'm doing it, because I'm just receiving information and I'm just flowing with it. So I was interested in what other people thought, but it just really gave me a huge perk, to know that one of our listeners, chose to comment on it. So
yeah.
Thank you for that. And actually what that comment did for me was it helped to validate something I was sensing when I got off the show yesterday.
Oh.
Which is, doing what I do on the show is really my sweet spot. And I know that, but yet, it's been an evolution over the last 3 months, 4 months, however many months now we've been doing this together, that it's each show I'm coming more into being who I really am and being more transparent. And, it's when I talked yesterday, I recognized I wasn't talking in a way like I was teaching. I wasn't necessarily wanting to inspire. It was I was just having it. You said it well. You said that seemed very cathartic for you. And it was just this incredible hour where I shared ideas. You interacted with me, but it was so very cathartic that it's that's my favorite thing to do. And it just felt so natural and so real. And I didn't feel like I was holding anything back. I didn't feel like I was filtering because, well, what if this one thinks this and what if that one thinks that? I was just being me. And I got to tell you, feeling the freedom to be who I am is one of the greatest joys in my life.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I hope other people are becoming less encumbered in their lives so that they can feel freer and freer, because, it's such a sweet spot. It's just such a nice feeling. And even though I was kind of fatigued after the show, because in a way I just like really laid it out there and just put everything on the line of what was going on in my world, it was a good kind of fatigue. It was like, because I didn't hold back. It's kind of like, the phrase, leave it all on the mat.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Which I think is a wrestler's phrase or some kind of M&A phrase or whatever. That's kind of how I felt. I just left it all. I didn't have anything afterwards that I went, oh, shoot, I wish I would have said da-da-da-da-da. It's like I just said what I wanted to say, and it was like very cool. So that was such a feeling for me of, this is what I want to be doing more of. This is really what I love to do. This is my sweet spot. And so, once again, Walt, I can't thank you enough for reaching out, and saying, hey, do you want to co-host with me? Because my answer then was yes. And my answer continues to be yes. And it's like, now it's a hell yes.
Well, that's good. Well, it's like the listener said, Susie, what's her name? Susie was the listener who wrote in after yesterday's show. And what she said in part was that she resonated with your conclusions about energy. And in the process of drawing your conclusions, you were flowing with the energy. The energy was not only flowing through you, but you were also exercising it. So it's no wonder you had left it all on the map. By that point, all the energy had flowed. It was done. Mm-hmm. It was as energetic as it could possibly be. So yeah, that was a rather unusual event. We haven't really done shows like that before, so that was kind of seminal. And it's going to be interesting to see, do we do it again? Does it emerge in another way? Because it's not like we really planned it. It just kind of flowed that way.
It either will or it won't. I know I'm most of the time in the flow. And so if something like that wants to flow, I'm ready to go.
Oh, it's even rhyming. That's good. Very good.
And then I had another thing that to me felt just so pleasant. I was training somebody who's new to the company, and so we've only been talking for 2 days. We don't really know each other that well, but he's getting to know me. I'm getting to know him. And he was sharing some stuff with me today, and I said, you're the first person, in the last 20 people that I've trained since we've had this new manager, that has shared with me the specific things that the manager actually says to our new hires. And I was fascinated by what he was telling me my boss had told him. And it was just really good, meaty, juicy information. And he said, well, do you know why I'm telling this to you? Which I thought that was an interesting question.
Yeah.
I said, no, but I'm very interested now in hearing. He said, because I could tell you're not like the normal executive assistant. And I said, okay, how so? And he goes, well, anybody in our role, meaning his new role, he said, we've all had executive assistants, we've all had admins, whatever. And he said, but I knew you weren't like that. And I said, what does that mean? And he was kind of went back to me telling him a little bit of my story of how I had been a costume designer. And when I was done with that, I went, well, how am I now marketable? And I kind of looked at all my skill sets and I went, well, I think I could put something together for a resume to show that I'm an assistant or an admin or an executive assistant or something like that. And he said, I recognize not only from your story, but from other things we talked about, he said, you don't come from just an admin perspective. He said, I get that you are an executive, that you have run companies, you're an entrepreneur. And he said, so I shared this with you more like you're my peer versus you're just an admin who's training me how to use our system.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, that was a huge compliment. I really fully received it. But one of the things I also recognized in it, and this was just my own personal discovery, was he kind of put things into words that I think I'd never really articulated quite like that, because I have felt different even amongst my peers for a very long time. And I never saw it this way, that of course I'm different, because I wasn't somebody who started out being a secretary or an assistant. I started out as a business owner. And in a way, not that I went backwards, but then I chose to go into corporate, into a support role. But I'd already been a business owner.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Where others had been supporting me. And so when I do support a little bit different because I think about it in terms of a very holistic viewpoint. And it was just really a kind thing for him to share with me what he did, both about what my boss had trained him on, but just sharing why he felt I was different.
That's
because
nice.
That just really validated me in a really nice way. Because I don't have the feeling of I'm above or below anybody, but it did kind of help me understand why sometimes I feel I'm different, or I don't quite fit into the pack, or everybody else is saying yes, 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 and I'm going, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's always an uncomfortable position, to be the one person saying, no.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. But it's like, because I really am a business owner, I am an entrepreneur at heart. And so it's, how cool is it to have somebody who I've only known for 2 days recognize that about me? It defied my title, and he saw me. I was like, that's so cool. What a cool individual. So that to me was just a very pleasant, warm and fuzzy, thank you, that I felt to him. And so anyway.
It's good stuff. Yeah, I'd call that a huge win for the day. So good going. Yeah, that was a nice one to get. That's one that stays with you for a long time. So fantastic.
I think that might stay with me for a very long time.
Yeah, that's really good. Very, very good. I actually spent a good part of today working on editing the book, which is a good thing in and of itself, because I have relayed a number of times on the show how I was frustrated because I wasn't getting to it. So to actually have time to work on it was good. This is like another. We're on. Let's see. This is Tuesday, so this is like the third work day in a row where I could actually work on the book and make progress, and that was a good feeling. That was really good. And I was working through some stuff and really appreciating. Different authors have different levels of writing skill and so forth, and today's experience was really helping me appreciate the ones who have the really top writing skill. I now appreciate them almost more than anything else, just because it makes my job so much easier when I'm faced with an article that I don't have to hardly do anything to. It's just it works, and that's a nice thing. So good progress made today. Good progress.
Good for you. Good for all of us.
Yeah, we're getting closer. The day is coming. I'm about 2/3 of the way through now, so we're getting closer.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were talking about the law of attraction, the basics of the teachings of Abraham, and I am pleased and proud to say that we are no longer on part 2.
We have completed part 2.
We did. We did it a couple days ago.
Roll.
We're up to part 3, which is entitled The Science of Deliberate Creation, which is a pretty key portion of the book. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where, okay, we've taken this idea of the law of attraction as vibration. Now, what are we going to do with it? Well, Abraham answers that question first by defining things. So the very first section is entitled The Science of Deliberate Creation Defined. Well, there we go. Jerry asks, Abraham, you have spoken to us of deliberate creation. Would you discuss the value of that to us and clarify what you mean by deliberate creation?
And Abraham says, we have called it the science of deliberate creation because we are assuming that you want to create on purpose. But actually, it is more aptly called the law of creation. For it works whether you are thinking of what you want or what you do not want. Whether you are thinking of what you do want or whether you are thinking of the lack of what you do want, the direction of your thoughts is your choice. The law of creation goes to work upon whatever you are thinking about.
And I just want to stop for a second there before you go any further. I want to emphasize this to all listeners who have been kind of wondering about, what about all those negative situations? Well, yeah, it actually applies in all situations. It applies in everything that happens in our lives. And I don't say that to be mean. I don't say that to be cruel. I simply say it to be real, because that's the reality. And it's just something we need to keep in mind at all times. The law of creation is not just about what we want to create. Everything that goes through our minds is part of the creation.
And the law of creation goes to work upon whatever you are thinking. And so that's where you're saying, whether you're thinking something positive, whether you're thinking something negative, law of creation goes into that.
Yeah, whether it's what you want, whether it's the lack of what you want, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're focusing on, boom, you're there.
And I know that sometimes that can be a hard pill to swallow
Yeah.
for people to recognize that they're as responsible for what they don't like that shows up in their life as much as what they do like. But I have to tell you, when I first really was willing to entertain that thought and really go, because, it didn't feel good at first. But
No.
I thought, this is what I concluded. That means that I'm always at choice. I'm always in control. Even if I don't understand how all this creation stuff works, on some level, I'm in control. I have to tell you, as a former control freak, that was a really inviting idea.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I'm in control. I'm in control. So here's what I proposed to myself. If I can figure this stuff out, if I can figure out how the law of attraction works, how law of deliberate creation works, how the law of creation works, period, I should be able to create a pretty darn nice life.
Yeah.
Because I get to control it. And
exactly.
That really was very, very nice. I like that idea.
It's kind of like learning to drive a car. Because literally, when you drive a car, you can drive it to get from place to place, or you can actually, hopefully never, use it to kill somebody. I mean, it literally gives you that degree of power. And when you're learning to drive, the proper way, the way that is respectful of other people and so forth, that's giving you a tremendous level of power. It's in your hands at all times. And, every moment that we exercise it for not only our good, but for the good of others around us by driving safely, it just adds to the power. We become more powerful, and we become more confident in our power. That's what happens over time. We become more confident in our ability as drivers. And in that becoming more and more confident, we end up producing a better and better driving record. And then our life insurance, our auto insurance companies, they reward us for it by giving us lower rates, right? That's what they tell us on TV anyway. But the truth is that we do feel more powerful. And that's really the key point. We end up being more powerful by exercising the power.
So to kind of piggyback on that metaphor, it's like as the driver, we're in control of where the car goes, how it goes, etc.
Yep.
But there are things under the hood of a car that I do not understand. And if it breaks, I don't know how to fix it. So that's kind of like the law of attraction, where it's the engine behind the car going or not going, but I'm the one in control of how it goes. So I kind of like that metaphor.
Yeah.
That kind of works.
Because you get to decide, well, am I going to drive it over here and onto the highway so I can get to my destination? Am I going to drive it over here and drive it over my neighbor's property? What's my choice? It's completely up to me.
Or am I going to just sit in the parking lot
and do nothing?
On idle?
Yeah, and never put it into gear.
Because, I think as people, we do that sometimes too.
Yeah.
We just kind of sit on idle going, do I go that way or that way? I don't know. I think I'll just sit here until I can figure it out.
Mike Dooley does a nice little routine on that one. He talks about how you've got you're in the car, you're ready for your trip, you got your vision boards in the back seat, you got the secret on the seat next to you, but nothing happens until you put it into gear.
There you go.
There it is.
There you go. All right, so let's see what else Abraham says.
All right.
For your physical perspective, from your physical perspective, this equation of creation has two important parts: the launching of the thought and the expectation of the thought. The desire for the creation and the allowing of the creation. From our non-physical perspective, we experience both parts of that equation simultaneously, for there is no gap between what we desire and what we fully expect. Most humans are unaware of their power of their thoughts, the vibrational nature of their being, or the powerful law of attraction. So they look at their action to make everything happen. That was definitely me. And while we agree that action is an important component in the physical world in which you are focused, it is not through your action that you are creating your physical experience.
That takes some time too. That last concept takes some time, and I still work on that one.
It is. I'm going to say it again. It is not through your action that you are creating your physical experience.
That's huge. That's a huge thing. That's just huge.
So let's go on and see if that can get explained.
Okay.
So when you understand the power of thought and practice your deliberate offering of it, you will discover the powerful leverage in creating that only comes from desiring and allowing. When you prepave or positively anticipate with your thoughts, the amount of action required is far less, and the action is more satisfying. If you do not take the time to align your thoughts, far more action is required without the satisfying results.
Okay, so now we have some clarity there, because at first it sounded like we weren't going to take any action at all. Now it's clear we are going to take action. It's just that it comes second. It's not the first thing to do. So now the order of things is starting to appear.
And so, Abraham talks about when you prepave, and that's a term that they use. It's something I had done for a long time. I just didn't use the word prepaving. I use the word intending. So when I would purposefully intend what I want for something before it happens, it's kind of like a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
I remember if I had to present something at work and I would have to do it as soon as I got there. I remember while I was in the car, I would be thinking through, what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. I might even imagine what I hoped the audience would do and how they would receive it. Would they make positive comments? Would they clap? Would they ask questions? And I just kind of thought through all the details of how I wanted something to happen. But I wasn't just okay, I'm memorizing my presentation. I was also thinking in terms of I want to be well received. I can imagine people afterwards coming up and thanking me and saying, wow, this made a lot of sense to me. I now have a lot more insight on this subject. And and I'll give you a really cool example of prepaving.
Okay.
This was while I was at the job that I'm at now, but it was years ago. I don't probably only been there about a year. And I had organized this really big event for my team. And on the last day, we were kind of all summarizing, all the things we had learned. And I remember as I was heading to work that morning, prepaving, if you will, that I was so appreciated that my boss called me out and, spoke really high praise of me and said all sorts of positive things. And I can't remember now what it was, but I even had a specific phrase I wanted him to use about me.
Oh.
And sure enough, that evening came. We had all gone to dinner, and he clinked the glasses, and he said, I'd like to say a few words. And he called me out. He said, I would like to pay special attention to Wendy. She's done an incredible job. And whatever that phrase was that I was looking for, he inserted into his little toast.
Nice.
And then they presented me with this incredibly beautiful bouquet of flowers. And he said, we want you to know how much not only you're appreciated, but, how much we're glad that you're a part of us now. And I remember after it was all said and done thinking, oh my God, it was word for word, everything I wanted him to say, he said, and how I wanted to feel, is how I ended up feeling. And so that really taught me the power of intending or prepaving, not only just the things you want to do, but how you want to feel and how you want other people to receive you. It was very, very cool. So if you've never heard of prepaving, that's kind of what prepaving is and what it can bring to you.
Yeah, and the power of intention is truly powerful when we use it, particularly to our benefit and with intention.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see. Is there anything more you want to say on this paragraph here?
Well, that pretty much covers it, I think. He starts to go into an example, or Abraham starts to go into an example to illustrate it, so we can go there.
Okay. So it says, your hospitals are filled to the brim with those who are now taking action to compensate for inappropriate thoughts. They did not create the illness on purpose, but they did create it through thought and through expectation. And then when they went to the hospital to take physical action, okay, I'm going to say this again. Mm-hmm. And then they went to the hospital to take physical action to compensate. We see many people spending their days exchanging their action for money because the money is essential to the freedom of life in this society. And yet, in most cases, the action is not action in joy. It is an attempt to compensate for misaligned thought.
Okay, now let's do a little radio survey. Of course, we can't see you raising your hands, but we're going to imagine it. Everybody raise your hand if you've ever done any of those things. If you have ever focused on the wrong stuff and had it come true, or if you've ever bought something and felt bad about it afterward and said, "Oh, geez, I really wish I didn't have to spend the money," or any of these things that are counterproductive, like they're describing this in this little paragraph here. How many hands do I see? Oh, I see. Okay, almost all of them.
Well, I'll have both of my hands up. Okay?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, well, and that is a very typical thing that most of us do when we don't understand the law of creation. We just think if we want something, we have to do something with a capital D-O. We have to do something to make it happen.
Yeah.
But we don't often think about how we want to feel in advance, by pre-paving, the positive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of go, okay, in the case that they're giving here with illness, it's like, all right, well, I'm sick. Well, what do? Well, you go to a doctor.
Yeah, he'll fix it, right?
Yeah. And I believe what Abraham is saying is, before your body ever gets into the state of being where it is ill, if we were more mindful of what we desire and are focused more on what we desire, then the chances are become like almost so unlikely that we would ever get sick.
Mm-hmm. So let's zero in on that. Let's zero in on that for a moment. So what are some of the thoughts that we have that lead us to get sick? I mean, because if we're not realizing that we're doing it, it's really important to know what the thoughts are so we can notice them, right?
Well, so here's the part that sometimes is a little tricky, because illness itself is not necessarily connected to thought, but thoughts that are resistant thoughts create stress in the body, because everything we experience, our body experiences as well. And so when our body is experiencing the stress due to any kind of resistant thoughts, eventually that part of the body that is represented by the type of thought you're thinking actually will break down.
So it turns out what the doctors have been telling us all these years that we always took as like a throwaway thing. Oh, well, stress is always a contributing factor, and we say, oh yeah, and then we kind of dismiss it. Hello, stress is a contributing factor. Pay attention. Yeah. This is a great big warning sign here. You do not want to put yourself in a stressful situation. You don't want to make yourself have stressful thoughts. You don't want to make yourself focus on things that are going to make you feel stressed. You don't want it to go in directions that are going to put you stressful.
But see, most of the time, Walt, I don't think we're even thinking about it in the terms of stress. Now, I happen to use the word stress because I relate well to that word. But if you think about any time you put pressure on your body, it's stress.
That's right.
How do you stress out? How do you put pressure on the body? By being in resistance.
And how do you be resistant?
By thinking a thought that your inner being is not thinking.
And now we have a very key clue. That the reason we feel stress about any situation, whether it be the kids not paying attention, the parents giving us a hard time, the boss not appreciating us, classmates giving us more hard time than anybody could possibly give, relatives calling on the phone and dumping all their problems. Guess what? They're all stress inducers. And so they give us all kinds of opportunities to say, well, it's the kids, it's the parents, it's the boss, it's the teachers, it's the classmates, it's the coworkers. And what really we're learning is, no, it's not really those things at all. That's not it. They may be encouraging us to make the negative change to our own detriment, but we're the ones doing the feeling inside. We are the ones putting the stress on.
Because it's how we're choosing to respond to every given stimuli that determines whether we feel good or feel not good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so the same circumstance may not have the same response from two different people. And so you can't blame the kid on the playground as the culprit when one parent goes, yeah, I'm not having a problem with that. And another parent's like, I do have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
The same kid doing the same thing and two different parents having two different reactions.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So the one who's having the issue with it is, without recognizing it, probably, is creating stress within the body. Now, if you only do it one time, it's not going to do that much of a deal. You're not going to create any kind of permanent damage. But if you keep putting the same type of stress on a person over and over and over, eventually the body kind of goes, I give. I can't keep holding on to this anymore without there being a different level of consequence.
That's exactly right. And add in the fact that so many of us get confused because we say, well, wait a minute, if somebody comes over and they attack me physically and they, hit me over the head and knock me to the ground, aren't you just blaming me for it? No, we're not blaming anybody. I mean, certainly the person who attacks you is going to have their own consequences they're going to have to deal with one way or another because, what goes around comes around, right? Law of attraction, like attracts like. So in some way, they're going to have consequences too. But we still get to choose how we're going to react to it. We still get to choose what our response is going to be. Yes, we were attacked. Okay, fine, given. But does that mean we're going to become a victim? We're going to adopt the mantlehood of victim and stay in that role and go around tell all our friends about how we're victims and then tell ourselves in the mirror how we're a victim and start behaving like a victim in other areas of our lives? Because that's what we so often do.
So I lost the plot of this. So how is that connecting to what we're talking about here about hospitals are filled with people who are compensating for...
Well, it's talking about the stress. This is all about the stress. And stress is what we put on ourselves. Yes, we have events that occur in our lives, events that occur and directly impact us. But we often say it's the events that cause the stress. And no, it's not the events that cause the stress. We caused the stress in the way we chose to react to events.
Mm-hmm. The meaning that we give to any circumstance.
Right.
Is they're going to cause us stress or not stress.
Regardless of whether somebody else is at wrong, we still get to decide how we're going to react. We get to decide how we're going to internalize it. Are we going to internalize it in a way that increases our stress levels? Or are we going to find a way around that to decrease our stress levels? We can do either one. That's true power. That's power that most of us don't realize we have.
So the next section, actually we're in the same section, but the next paragraph is in italics. And so I'm curious to see if this gives us more insight. It says, you have intended action. That is part of the deliciousness of the physical world in which you live. But you did not intend to do your creation through physical action. You intended to use your body to enjoy that which you have created through your thought.
Not exactly what we were normally taught when we're growing up, was it?
I'm not quite sure I'm even totally comprehending this. So I'm going to keep reading and see if it makes sense, and if not, I'm going to go back.
Oh, okay. All right.
As you set forth your thought in advance, feeling positive emotion, you have then launched your creation. And when you walk through space and time toward the manifestation in your future, expecting that it will be there, then from that joyful creation that you have launched into the future, you will be inspired to the action that is action in joy.
So going back to the previous paragraph emphasized we did not intend to do our creating through physical action. We intended to use our body to enjoy that which we created through our thought. And I think it probably should have said first through our thought. In other words, we came here intending to think it first and then enjoy, not to use the action as the impetus for whether we're going to enjoy something.
Yeah.
And then the second paragraph takes it a step further by saying, by feeling that positive emotion, we then launch a creation. And in their words, when we walk through space and time toward that manifestation in the future, expecting it to be there, then from that joyful creation that we have launched in the future, We are inspired to the action that is action and joy. And that action ultimately is what takes us there. It's how we get there. But it got inspired first by the thought. It got inspired first by the creativity within the mind. The creativity comes first, the action comes second.
I would definitely say that I've experienced that when I put thoughts first and allow my thoughts to kind of get so exciting to me that it starts to generate new ideas, and then new ideas often are filled with different actions that I want to take.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've done the thinking first, then the actions that come to me are those that are inspired to come, or those are the inspired thoughts about actions to take. They're inspired. It's not just, well, nothing fun is happening, so I'm just going to do something and see what happens. But the thought part came first. So they're talking about how the thought is the creation.
Right.
And then there's an impulse to take action.
Right.
And now when you take that action, the action that you take is a joyful action. It's not filled with effort. It's easy, it flows, and it feels good.
Which means that when Wendy talks about how she was always a doer, she still gets to be a doer. That's good news. It's not like you have to give up on doing. The only difference is you change the order in which you, quote, do things, unquote. You do the creation process first, and then you do the doing. So you still get to be the doer.
Well, and the biggest shift that I've made recently is because of the acknowledgement that focusing is doing.
Yes.
I never thought of thinking as doing. I always thought of thinking as thinking and doing as doing. And now what I've come to recognize is that when I use my mind and the power of my focus to think, that's a really big action step.
It is.
And that's the action step that's required for inspired action to show up, for me to get the impulse and the inspiration to take a physical action. But the focused action is really step one.
In fact, I've always been just a little bit annoyed by people who say that doing the focusing requires no effort. Well, yeah, it does require effort. You know, it may not be.
Tons.
It may not be doing in the sense of going over and picking up a book and walking over to a chair to read it, but it still requires effort. And I would argue that when we are in our early stages of kind of being flaccid and not really having done this deliberately for the longest period of time, it can take a lot of effort to start focusing. I mean, I found early on, by early on I mean within the last 10 years when I was first trying to become a deliberate creator, early on I found focusing to be extremely difficult. It no longer is. It's gotten to the point now where it's easy because I kept working at it and kept trying and learning and practicing and so on. But early on, focusing was a major effort, far worse than going over and picking up a 300-pound barbell or something like that. That was easy by comparison.
Well, you know, yesterday I introduced Project B as in boy, or actually Project B as in body.
Mm-hmm.
And after we got off the call, I was thinking more about, wow, I just introduced Project B.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing that I just felt like I wasn't ready to do. Well, the reason I felt I wasn't ready to do it is because to me, I thought it takes so much effort to focus with such intensity and consistency on one topic. I didn't think I was ready for it.
Mm-hmm,
because
sure.
to me, that is an action step. And it takes a lot of effort in the beginning because I was playing with it last night. And I went, okay, well, right now Project B is just kind of blobby. It doesn't have a lot of another technical term.
Yeah, that's right.
Our LOA Urban Dictionary. So it was kind of blobby and fuzzy, and it didn't really have a whole lot of dimension because I don't yet have a lot of clarity. You know, I've had gazillions of thoughts over time, but, you know, nothing that I could really hone in on and go, this is exactly what I want, boom. And so it's just like, okay, well, what do I want? And the more I think about it, I'm like, well, I want lots of different stuff. You know, I want to be healthy and I want to be vital, and I want my body to look good and feel good, and I want to be energized. And not that these are bad things at all. I mean, I do want all this stuff.
Oh, sure.
But there wasn't any real juiciness, if you will.
No.
I didn't say the words and go, yes, that's what I want.
Well, just the way you made the list there, your whole list sounded blasé the way you were saying it. It actually contained some very good things, but it's like, there was no enthusiasm to it.
Exactly. But you know what? Project X started that way for me. Project X was just kind of a laundry list of things that I want, and but it was kind of blobby. It didn't have any real solid focus. There were no good sharp edges where I could say, yes, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a sense, and this is what I was really this is what I was thinking about yesterday. I wasn't quite focused, but I was thinking is now I know why I haven't manifested this one before. Because it's taking a little bit more effort than I wanted it to actually get it going. You know, it feels like it's very manual, like kind of like if you have a butter churn and it's not a motorized one, it's a manual. Oh my gosh, I've watched people churn butter and they're like, my arms are aching, you know, because it's so much effort.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm not quite sure how to reconcile this because Abraham talks about the whole concept with law of attraction is that things come with ease. So I'm like, all right, I'm not quite sure how to bring this thing into a space of ease because right now, trying to get really clear is just feeling not ease. And I know I'll get an answer, but, you know, because I'm being very purposeful right now. But what I can recognize is how the reason I let Project B slide so many times is because whenever I hit one of these ho-hum places, I didn't push through.
Right.
I didn't go, okay, what's a new question to ask? How can I stay on this topic and how can it become exciting to me? I wanted it to just be there already.
Yes.
I didn't want to do the thinking work, the focusing work that was required to get it to a point where it's filled with ease.
Like I already had the thought. Isn't that good enough? That's what it feels like. I had the thought. I want to have the body. I want to have the money. I want to have the relationship. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, yeah, like shouldn't that be enough?
Isn't that enough? Yeah.
Well, it's enough if your feelings are really engaged and exciting and you know you're broadcasting some wonderful feeling into the universe that the law of attraction can match you up with it.
And if you're not resisting it in any way by having doubts or concerns or like, oh, geez, I'm not really sure if that's going to work or whatever else along that line.
So I can tell you this. When I gave my little laundry list of, well, I want to feel vitality and I want to feel good and I want to have stamina, what's really, how do I say this? There are some other energies active in me when I'm saying those, which, okay, this is the download coming to me, which is making me saying that list of things I want feel like I'm going through sludge.
Yes.
I mean, would you say that that's kind of what my laundry list of here's what I want in terms of health and body, kind of like I'm going through sludge?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Well,
it's like swimming through molasses or something.
Yeah, and I even had the word molasses. We're very in sync here.
Okay.
But I was getting, literally as I was talking, I was asking myself questions in my head and I was getting these answers, which is that is a way that I can sense that resistance is actually right there and it's active because it feels like I'm going through sludge.
Ah, very good. I like that.
The sludge is the feeling of sludge is another word for calling it resistance. So even though I'm using these positive words, vitality and stamina and, you know, health, the words are good, but there was not really a whole lot of excitement because I was dragging my positive intention through my resistance. And so it wasn't pure positive energy.
No. And I've
But
done the same thing.
even
We've all done the same
say
thing.
that again.
I've done the same thing. We've all done the same thing. I know we have. How do I know? Because there's so many people who haven't manifested everything they want to manifest into their lives. And usually it's the, quote, big things that we do this on, unquote. The big things are the ones that seem more difficult, that seem like, oh, yeah, I'm really putting myself out there because if this one doesn't come true, then I have to somehow explain why it didn't come true. Ugh, I don't know if I can handle that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where it all
So
comes in.
as I'm thinking, well, how do I get to the point that I can start focusing on Project Body in a way that is exciting to me? Like Project X has become extremely exciting to me. It's like, how do I get Project Body to go in that same direction?
Yep.
Well, I will tell you this, at least from what I've expressed right here on the show, is I was walking through sludge. I was dragging my desires through my resistance to my desires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I don't know what that means, but I promise you I'm going to ask some questions about that in order to get some clarity as to how I can unstick my desires from the stickiness of the molasses sludgy resistance. I want to yank them out and go, no, let's clean them off. Or like, when I see, like, I have this commercial in my head of where the Dawn soap detergent,
right,
that you use your sinks, how they use those on ducks that have been through like oil spills and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's like I want to just drown myself practically in the Dawn so that it can emulsify all of the sludgy stuff so that I can be squeaky clean and have my pure positive thoughts be just that, pure positive thoughts, that they can float on the water with ease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had the image of taking a shower to wash all the molasses off. I mean, literally, that's what we're trying to figure out a way to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the same thing with monetary issues. Money has always been the hardest one for me. That's been my hard one to overcome. And whenever I look at it up close, whenever I look at, I've tried to manifest stuff hasn't manifested, why hasn't it manifested? I always come to the same general conclusion, which is along the lines we're talking about here. I was wishing it, I was thinking it, I was hoping it in a way that felt like the sludge. Felt like I was just moving slowly through it, not getting all excited, and wondering why I didn't. And part of it I knew.
Got a great answer.
What's that?
Got a great answer.
Okay.
When we're doing that, we're looking through our own eyes at what is.
Yes.
And what has been.
Exactly.
And we neglected to say, hey, inner being, how are you viewing this? Because I promise you, if we see it through our inner being's eyes, there's no sludge, there's no molasses, there's no resistance.
That's a good point, yeah. And not only are we looking at it through the eyes of what is, there's also a piece of us that's looking at through the eyes of what we are afraid it's going to be. So we're projecting it. Not only is it what is, we're projecting it's going to be.
We're projecting the future will be more like today.
More like today, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a hard one to admit. It's a hard one to acknowledge that, yeah, I do that. And I really got to stop doing that. I got to do something different. So maybe this is the time to try to learn to pay attention to what my inner being is saying. So, inner being, how do you look at this?
I get the word bright.
Bright?
Like the future, yeah, bright. Our futures are bright. That's how our inner being sees the world.
Okay.
Our futures are bright. And they're clean and they're squeaky clean.
I have the image of somebody rubbing the plate on the commercial.
But, when you were talking about, projecting, what is into the future, I was just kind of reminded of how, when I used to talk in a way where if you asked me about certain aspects of my childhood, I could tell you all these things that I would consider abusive, not in the way that nobody hit me, but abusive because, that's how I learned through all sorts of weird counseling groups and whatnot, just to use the word abusive all the time,
Mm-hmm.
which that in itself is so not a cool thing.
No, it's not.
So I'd say, well, I was taught abusive ways to do things, or my parents' ways of teaching me things were so abusive because they didn't encourage this, instead they did this, and then I would label it abusive. It was a crazy thing that happened in the 90s. We used the word abuse on everything, or we called everything toxic. So if I knew that I had, oh my God, heaven forbid, I'd say, oh, I had toxic parents. Well, that's just a really huge umbrella.
Yeah.
How can you untoxify a parent?
That's true.
Like once you've labeled an experience or people as toxic, and then you keep thinking about it that way, you just keep activating that same thought.
Yeah, it perpetuates.
And so even if somebody had been physically abused, but it happened when they were 8 years old on the playground and somebody abused them. Okay, some bully pushed them around, beat them up, did whatever. Like that happened. When it was an abusive act. It happened when they were 8 years old. Now, if they're still thinking about it when they're 9 and 10 and 11, and then they go into therapy and they're telling their therapist about it, and they keep talking about it, the more you keep talking about it, the point is, it happened once. Nobody's saying that was a good thing or that, oh, yeah, it was, you caused it and therefore you deserved it. Nobody has to even say that. But the more you talk about it, the more you take your past and drag it into your present. And then to your point, you can even futurize it and go, I am always going to be an abused person because I got abused one time when I was 8 years old on the playground.
That's right. Yeah, that's what we end up doing to ourselves. And it just shows how rough we are on ourselves. We're really rough on ourselves.
Well, and heaven forbid we've had something that was really catastrophic. That has even more weight, especially in our society,
Yeah.
That we feel like we have even a greater right to keep carrying it forward and carrying it forward. And the truth is, we have the choice to let it go. Now, that is easier said than done.
Oh, yes.
And when I learned that concept, I was like, you've got to be kidding. I have been feeling this way for several decades, and I couldn't imagine that one day I could make a decision and go, okay, I'm not going to take that with me anymore. It's like, no, because it had become so familiar to me. It was like my security blanket. It actually gave me a sense of identity.
And it had molasses.
We don't give up identity lightly.
And it had molasses attached to it, so that's why it was still sticky. I couldn't get rid of it.
There you go. So it sometimes takes a lot of talking to yourself and allowing your inner being to shed new insight on the topic. And truly, when you connect with your inner being and your inner being's perspective, it becomes harder, put it that way. It becomes more difficult to hold on to thoughts that don't serve you anymore. And they go from this feels bad to, you know what, now I recognize it doesn't serve me. It's actually hurting me to hold on to this stuff for any length of time. Maybe now would be a good time to start letting it go. Because what would my life be like if I no longer dragged those abusive thoughts and memories and images with me? What if I stopped talking about being abused? What if I just stopped talking about it and see what happens?
And for those people who are like me, who have this kind of a built-in belief that I really don't have good communication going on with my inner being, I don't really know when my inner being is sending me messages. One thing that you, Wendy, and others of the co-hosts have been reminding me of, and Abraham has reminded me of, is that we all do have one really good method of learning what it is that our inner being is thinking or feeling or saying. And that is what we're feeling. The clue is, if we're feeling good, then what we're thinking about and what we're feeling about is in perfect harmony with what the inner being is saying. But when we're feeling bad, when it feels uncomfortable, then that's the signal that the inner being is not in sync with what we're thinking and what we're focusing on. So that gives us a clue. We have a really good clue right there about whether or not the inner being is in alignment, and if it is in alignment, now we know this is what the inner being thinks about, whatever X is.
Well said.
So that's
and
like,
that is
so even those of us who don't know how to connect with the inner being, guess what? We know how.
You've just never labeled it as connecting with your inner being. Because you're like, no, I just feel this, or this. And what if I said feeling equals connecting to your inner being? Because your inner being speaks to us through our feelings.
Exactly right. So
our feelings are indicators of the gap between what we're thinking and what our inner being is thinking. We came to this physical plane knowing that because we had this incredible emotional guidance system called feelings, that we would never feel like we are off the path. We would always know where we were in relationship to what we truly desired, because our inner being was constantly maintaining the positive energy of that which we really desire. And then how we felt about that thing that we desire, whatever that emotion was, would let us know, hot or cold. Are we getting closer to it? Are we moving further away from it? And if you're moving further away from it, then you go, oh, okay, what question do I ask, or what direction do I turn so that it could start feeling warmer until it's hot, red hot.
Yeah. Good stuff. So we've got a couple minutes left, and we got a couple paragraphs left. Why don't we finish up this section? Because I think it's going to kind of summarize what we've been talking about here anyway. Do you want to take it?
Yeah. So let's see. You read the next two things. All right. So when you are taking action, let me say it again. When you are taking action in your own now, and it is not action in joy, it is our absolute promise to you that it will not lead you to a happy ending. It cannot. It defies the law. Rather than being so ready to jump into action to get things that you want, we think them into being. See them, visualize them, and expect them, and they will be. And you will be guided, inspired, or led to the perfect action that will bring about the process that will lead you to that which you seek. And there is a great difference between that which we have spoken and the way most of the world is going about it.
We've certainly explored that difference today, because the difference, I think, is now pretty clear. The way that we're taught is the way, taught by, growing up, taught by being in the society, is the way most of the world looks at this, and is entirely different from what we were discussing today. The idea of putting our thought first and doing it with feeling and focusing on what we like and what we don't like, and then paying attention to what our emotional response is so that we know what our inner being is saying about it. That's entirely different from what our society teaches.
That is so very true.
Yep.
That is so, so very true. Wow.
Very big stuff. Well, we got about a minute and a half left. I just want to remind people, first of all, we haven't said this in a while. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and share. It's all right there on the homepage at loatoday.net. It's also how most of our loyal subscribers, because we have a lot of loyal subscribers, catch every single podcast that comes out, because it goes right to your smartphone. So just follow the instructions. Go to loatoday.net. If you haven't done it before, subscribe. And then after you subscribe, share with friends on social media. Say, hey, I just subscribed. You ought to check this out. And also a reminder, we're doing the show tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the special Tuesday night edition with Tom Wells. So you want to be sure to tune in for that as well. And actually, we have one more piece of business. This one doesn't take very long. It never does, because Wendy, you do it very concisely. But how do they reach out to you if they want some personal assistance?
Let me guess. I know where you're going with this. You want to hear me say, you can find me at wendydillard.com.
There it is. Okay. It's predictable, but it's wonderful. Wendy, it's been a pleasure. Let's do it again tomorrow.
You got it.
All right. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.